Tonight, remembering a hero. Thousands line the streets for the funeral of firefighter Barry Martin, who died following the fire at Jenner's in Edinburgh.
Barry was a hard-working, dedicated member of the service, loyal to his colleagues and also dearly loved by his family as well.
Also making the headlines, as a timeline for finding the next SNP leader is announced, the Health Secretary says he may throw his hat in the ring.
I'm giving it serious consideration, and that's right, because this is the biggest job in the country.
A Scottish man found guilty of spying for Russia is sentenced to more than 13 years behind bars.
And in sport, Celtic's boost ahead of next week's League Cup final against Rangers as Kyogo is declared fit.
I'm Emma Cameron in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. Hard-working, loyal, the epitome of what you would want in a colleague and friend. The words used to describe the firefighter Barry Martin, who was laid to rest today after a ceremony that brought parts of Edinburgh to a standstill.
The 38-year-old died after attending a blaze at the old Jenner's building last month. Hundreds of firefighters lined the Royal Mile this afternoon and paid tribute to their colleague. Our reporter Ivana Holland was there.
Beginning his final journey from the station where he worked. Members of Blue Watch stood guard over their colleague as the cortege made its way through Edinburgh. Barry Martin, a father of twin boys and husband to Shelley, sustained critical injuries after tackling a fire last month and died on the 27th of January. 400 firefighters and other first responders lined the Royal Mile to pay their respects to a man described as selfless. Among the mourners of family and friends, wreaths were laid, including by the outgoing First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. Colleagues came from across the country to say goodbye.
Barry was enthusiastic and passionate, just some of the words people used to describe him, and he remained that way throughout his time with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Barry's selfless duty will never be forgotten. We will ensure his memory continues to live on. Thank you, Barry, for your service and the tragic sacrifice you made in bravely responding to help your community. Rest in peace.
It was a poignant ceremony for the firefighter who joined the service in 2020. His family were reminded that all of Scotland were sharing in their grief for a man who paid the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty.
It's an opportunity to show your respects for the actual fallen firefighter that got killed in the line of action, but also to show the respect for his family and our neighbouring service.
They're not appreciated. I feel very sad for his family, his little boys, mum and his dad, his family.
We just thought it was very beautiful that there was so many people gathered here. I think, so we just wanted to look and pay a tribute, I think.
There's a very powerful day. The service itself, but also out here in the street, you can see that firefighters from across Edinburgh, from across Scotland, and indeed from across the UK have taken time out to come here today to bring their love and solidarity to Barry's family and colleagues and to demonstrate their respect for him.
Flowers, memories and messages. They've played such a huge part of today's service and pageantry, ensuring that the memory and sacrifice of Barry Martin is never forgotten. Ivana Holland, STV News, Edinburgh.
The Health Secretary, Humza Yousaf, says he's seriously considering standing to become the next leader of the SNP. Mr Yousaf says he will make his decision in the coming days after speaking with his family.
With nominations due to close a week from now, no one has officially put themselves forward. But the Deputy First Minister, John Swinney, is ruling himself out of any contest. Our political correspondent, Ewan Petrie, reports.
It's not just one word,
The Health Secretary was discussing a new pay offer on a visit to a hospital ward this morning. But since the First Minister announced her resignation, there have been questions over his own future.
Are you going to be standing for the leadership of your party? I'm giving it serious consideration, and that's right, because this is the biggest job in the country. So of course I'm giving it consideration. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But I'm also thinking about my family. I'm the father of 2 kids, devoted to them and my wife and my family. And if I did go for it and I did have the honour of being in that position, it could have a big impact on my family too. So I'll make my intentions known in the coming days. But yeah, I'm giving it consideration.
Humza Yousaf has faced repeated calls to quit following record waiting times at A&E.
Why should people trust you to take on the First Minister's role with that record?
Well, just bear in mind that, of course, these are problems that are affecting every single health service in the UK. There's not a health service in the UK that hasn't been impacted by the global pandemic to the extent where they're seeing lengthy waiting times, be it in A&E, be it for elective care.
Nominations will close at noon next Friday. If there is more than one candidate, the new leader will be chosen on a one-member, one-vote basis. The ballots will open at noon on the 13th of March and will close 2 weeks later, with the winner declared shortly after. Other potential candidates include the Finance Secretary Kate Forbes, Justice Secretary Keith Brown and former Westminster leader Angus Robertson. Ash Regan, who quit the government over its planned gender reforms, is also considering standing. But the Deputy First Minister has ruled himself out.
I think the SNP's at a moment, particularly because of the intransigence of the UK government on the constitutional question, that we need to think openly about how we take our next steps forward. And for that reason, I think we need fresh perspective, and we need people like me to create the space to enable that fresh perspective to come forward.
The SNP has the biggest political party membership, but not all are activists.
A lot of these inactive members who will have a vote probably don't know an awful lot about the senior pickers, which I think means that someone with a high profile could do quite well. I think a higher profile, especially with this remarkably short campaign period, is an advantage to whichever candidates move forward.
Those candidates have less than a week to set out their intentions. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
Well, our political editor, Colin Mackay, has been at the Labour Party conference, which got underway in Edinburgh today. And Colin, what was the focus there?
Do you know, there's really only one topic of discussion anywhere in Scottish politics just now, and that's who's going to replace Nicola Sturgeon as SNP leader and as First Minister of Scotland. It was strange spending the day at the Labour Party conference, but spending the same day on the phone to lots of people in the SNP. All the other journalists were doing the same thing, because everybody at the Labour Party conference just wanted to ask us what we thought was going on within the SNP. Now, from the SNP people that I have been speaking to today, there's a lot of high-level support for Humza Yousaf to be the next leader. I would expect him to probably launch his campaign maybe Sunday or Monday. There's support too for Kate Forbes, though. I think she might be looking at a similar timescale. And Keith Brown is considered by some to be potentially a bit of a dark horse, because he would be considered to have a lot of support among the activists within the party. But with John Swinney ruling himself out, making it sound like he's not even desperately keen to stay in cabinet, it really does feel like a changing of the guard.
Indeed. And Colin, what did the Labour leader have to say today?
Well, Labour are also pretty pleased today, because there's an opinion poll that suggests they are not that far behind the SNP in the run-up to a Westminster election. It puts them much closer than other polls have previously. And Anas Sarwar, in his speech today, he had a few policy announcements to make about cutting the number of NHS bosses, cutting the number of health boards to just 3, an Amazon tax on online shopping, and also buying up empty properties, empty houses, and selling them back to families to fix up for just £1. But even he, in his conference speech, had to focus on the SNP leadership. Labour thinks the resignation of Nicola Sturgeon is a game changer. So after hastily rewriting his conference speech, Anas Sarwar had an obvious message for his party.
The time for change is now, and together let's deliver the change that Scotland needs.
Launching an attack on the SNP leadership candidates, he said the country needs a change from the SNP.
A government that is not on the side of people and is not working to deliver the people's priorities. And who do they now believe will come and fix the mess? The Health Secretary who has delivered the longest waiting times in our history? The Air Miles Culture Secretary jetting around the world while cutting services here at home? The Finance Secretary who has decimated local communities? The Justice Secretary who won't give police officers the equipment they need? The very people that created the mess can't now be the ones to fix the mess.
And he made a pitch to win pro-union voters back from the Conservatives.
Every day the Tories remain in office is another day where our United Kingdom is at risk. So if you want one surefire way to protect the future of the United Kingdom, it's this: elect a Labour government.
And his message of change was one that Labour candidates for the next general election lapped up.
We are hungry, and so are the Scottish people. They know that the SNP government is at the end of the road and that the Tory government in Downing Street needs to get going. So the people are ready for it, we're ready for it, and we are on standby to deliver.
We've stagnated socially, economically, politically for 15 years. We're not a country that has ease with itself, and I think Scottish Labour has a positive vision for a country that can get match fit for the mid-21st century.
I've never felt so energised for a very long time about where we are, and I think Anas has got a lot of the credit for that because he really has steered a direction for us in Scotland.
Scottish Labour, the change Scotland needs. Thank you.
After this week, the one thing that is certain in Scottish politics is that change is coming, and it's coming a long way before the next general election. Colin Mackay, STV News.
Well, as we've mentioned, health unions are considering a fresh pay offer from the Scottish Government. Nurses, paramedics and midwives could see an average 6.5% rise from April if it's accepted. Well, Caroline Lewis joins us now. And Caroline, what does this new offer entail?
Well, as you said, this will see most of the staff get an average pay rise of about 6.5%, but that's for next year and comes on top of this year's pay offer, which, despite only being a few weeks from the end of the financial year, still hasn't been agreed by all the unions. So they've fast-tracked next year's negotiations, trying to kill two birds in one stone and get them both agreed at the same time. So when you club those two together, it means that across the 2 years, mid-ranking staff will get a pay rise somewhere in the region of 13 to 16%, while the lowest paid staff will get more than 19%. And on top of that, there will also be a one-off payment to staff depending on what banding they're in, and that'll range from somewhere around £300 to just over £900. But it's not just about the pounds. This package also includes reforms to the whole system, and that is aiming at tackling really historic issues like recruitment and retention. And so those are the details that members will now have to really look at. But this is a record-breaking deal, and one that the unions now say they feel that they can finally take to members.
I think that shows the pressure, the mandate of this for being able to take industrial action, and it shows that we can, through constructive negotiation, get to a point where we get an improved offer, and that's where we are today. That's welcome. It's a credible offer for our members to consider, but ultimately it will be for them.
So we hear there, Caroline, a credible offer. Could this bring the dispute to an end?
Well, at the moment, things seem quite positive. The Health Secretary said that this offer will make Scottish health workers some of the best paid in the UK, the best paid in the UK. And the unions seem quite positive as well. The Royal College of Midwives has said that it contains a lot of what they've asked for. Unison has said that it's one that they're going to be seriously considering. So positive sort of moves, but it doesn't mean that the prospect of strike is off the table. Three of those unions, GMB, the Royal College of Nursing and the Royal College of Midwives, all still have live industrial action mandates active. So they have those in their arsenal to use if this offer is rejected by members.
Caroline, thank you.
To other stories, and a man has appeared in court charged with sexually assaulting a child after an 11-year-old girl was reported missing. Andrew Miller faces 2 charges under the Sexual Offences Scotland Act. The 53-year-old, also known as Amy George, previously appeared at Selkirk Sheriff Court, facing charges of threatening and abusive behaviour and abduction.
There's set to be major rail disruption this weekend, with no direct services running between London and Scotland due to engineering works. Network Rail are to carry out repairs on both East Coast and West Coast main lines, forcing passengers to find alternative routes. Both lines are expected to reopen by Monday.
More than £2 million has been raised this year for research into motor neuron disease in honour of rugby legend Doddy Weir. Around 40,000 people have taken part in 6 weeks of running, rowing and riding as part of the Doddy Aid Challenge. The My Name's Doddy Foundation was set up by Doddy himself prior to his death in November.
Prepaid cards which help families buy food have more than £2 million on them still to be spent. The Scottish Government is urging families to check as more than 3,000 Best Start food cards have an unspent balance. A food bank say the cards mean people don't rely on their services and that they need to be better advertised. A Scottish spy found guilty of passing secret information to Russia has been sentenced to more than 13 years in jail. David Smith, who's originally from Paisley, supplied details about the British Embassy in Berlin and its staff in exchange for cash payments.
The 58-year-old was caught following an MI5 sting operation in August 2021. Sentencing him, the judge said that Smith had put people at maximum risk and that he'd betrayed his country. As Ian Woods reports.
David Smith had pleaded guilty to taking photos and videos inside the British Embassy and then sending some of that material to the Russian Embassy. He claimed he was just a disgruntled employee and acted while drunk to embarrass his bosses because they didn't appreciate his work. But the judge described what he did as treachery, which was rewarded with Russian money. Smith had amassed a huge amount of photos and videos recording the layout of the embassy in Berlin, as well as secret documents, including a letter to the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson. After a letter Smith sent to a Russian military attaché was intercepted, a covert operation was mounted to catch him. A British agent posing as a Russian called Dmitry visited the embassy, pretending to have classified information to pass on. Smith used a camera to record pictures of the man on CCTV, photocopied a bogus document he'd brought in, and kept details of a SIM card he'd been given. Smith was in the habit of talking to himself, and he could be heard describing why he was taking the pictures.
If it was an embassy, they must recognise him. It's probably not a deal with an embassy, but at least you've done it.
Smith was also secretly filmed meeting another British agent posing as a member of Russian military intelligence. Justice Wall said that former colleagues had described Smith as having anti-British and anti-Western views, and he'd expressed sympathies towards Russian President Putin. He sentenced him to a total of 13 years and 2 months in jail, saying that he must have been aware that the documents he provided would pose a threat not just to individuals, but to the security of the country. More than £800,000 has been spent improving security at the embassy in Berlin as a result of Smith's spying.
Ian Woods reporting. A play which explores the provision of health care for deaf people living with dementia is opening in Glasgow tonight. Love Beyond is the story of Harry, a deaf man with the disease, who's trying to piece together the memories of his life while finding it difficult to communicate with his carers who do not know sign language. Susan Ripple reports.
Welcome, Mr. Supriya.
As Harry's dementia develops, he has to move to a care home. But his nursemaid doesn't know sign language.
I've never had to settle a deaf person before.
It's a challenge facing deaf people living with the disease, and something Ramesh felt passionate about highlighting. We spoke with him via an interpreter.
The play offers no translation, no interpretation, which means that the hearing audience will be able to understand me, and they won't understand Harry necessarily. The deaf audience will understand Harry, but not necessarily understand me. And so we see this frustration of communication barriers and replicated on stage and in the audience because there's nobody to translate.
Throughout the play, Harry tries to piece together his memories from over the years, in particular happy times with his late wife.
Let me help you.
But he's brought back to the reality of life now.
Particularly Ramesh's character is quite distrusting of her, and she's frustrated that he's not communicating with her, and he's not being jolly that she's trying her hardest. And then their relationship really, I think, becomes one of a sort of friendship, actually, and that he trusts her, and you see that. Sorry. I will get better at this, I promise.
May eventually learns British Sign Language, but by the time she's able to start communicating with Harry, he forgets it himself.
Sign language for deaf people is part of who we are. It's so much a part of our identity. I cannot imagine how that would feel to not be able to sign, to not be able to use my language. It breaks my heart, to be honest, to think of that.
The production is at the Tron Theatre for the next 2 nights. Susan Ripple, STV News, Glasgow.
Other stories in the West, and police say the deaths of 2 people in the West End of Glasgow are being treated as unexplained, but there are no suspicious circumstances. A 60-year-old man and a 65-year-old woman were found dead inside the property in Merklin Street in Partick on Wednesday morning. A Glasgow secondary school has received a new piano for its music department thanks to a donation from former pupils Jim Kerr and Charlie Birchill from the rock band Simple Minds. The duo got involved when Holyrood Secondary ran a fundraiser for a new instrument.
We were delighted, and it was really nice to think that they had enjoyed their time at Holyrood and that they've not forgotten about us and will not forget about you.
We have a concert in June. It'll motivate a lot of people, I think, to come and practice and get something new out of it, a new experience.
Sean will be here shortly with the weather and give us good news. Sean, good news.
Well, I'm afraid I bring bad news really for the next couple of days. Between now and Wednesday, plenty of rain to come through, especially across Argyll and the Highlands. A little bit less further south and east, and further spells of windy weather as well. But shout outbreaks of rain around during tomorrow, but heavier rain coming into the northwest on Sunday, and also breezier conditions as well. But for the full weekend forecast, I'll be back later on.
Well, time now for sport, and Rahman, some good news for Celtic.
That's right, Emma. They've got some big games coming up, and one of their main players has been declared fit. Good evening. Ange Postecoglou says the league's top goal scorer Kyogo is good to go ahead of next weekend's League Cup final against Rangers. The striker picked up a shoulder injury in their Scottish Cup win on Saturday, but is in the squad for the visit of Aberdeen tomorrow. Here's Ronnie Charters.
The sight every Celtic fan wants to see. After coming off injured last week, their talisman Kyogo is back on the training field and raring to go ahead of next week's League Cup final.
No, Kyogo's fine, mate. He trained today, had a session yesterday, and he's good to go. I think he missed, we were in Monday or Tuesday, he missed the session there just to get some treatment on it, and he's trained the last 2 days, so no issues.
Before the showdown at Hampden, Celtic welcome Aberdeen in the Premiership. Yesterday, Michael Beale said the chances of Rangers winning the league are low as they trail their rivals by 9 points.
We just kind of focus on our performance and trying to play as well as we can. From my point of view, I don't think 9 points is a big gap. It can change quickly, and we're fully aware of that. So we know we just have to keep performing well and winning games and see where that takes us.
Off the pitch, the club this week announced pre-tax profits of more than £30 million in their latest financial results.
Again, my responsibility is how we invest the hard-earned funds that are brought to this club by, our supporters, the people who back us, whether that be in the squad or, infrastructure or staffing, resourcing, all those kind of things that we spend it wisely. That's where the importance of my role comes into it.
David Turnbull will miss tomorrow's clash with Aberdeen as Celtic look to make it 9 wins in a row in all competitions. Ronnie Charters, STV News.
Stuart Kettlewell says he hasn't been interviewed for the Motherwell manager's job, but admits he has loved being back in the dugout. The interim boss steered the Steelmen to a 2-1 win over St Mirren on Wednesday night. The club have held talks with Ian Holloway and Grant McCann over the vacant position at Fir Park.
It's been made very clear. I've had a conversation with the board and I've asked me to take the game again on Sunday, so again that makes it really clear for the players and for everybody that surrounds the football club. I've loved the challenge and I always have done. Go back to being a player, I go back to being a coach and a manager. Sometimes in these positions I probably relish that more.
James Hill hopes a successful spell at Hearts can help him become a regular at Bournemouth next season. The defender is on loan from the Premier League side and says the move to Tynecastle is developing his game.
Obviously I'm at a Premier League club now and I want to go back and I want to have a fighting chance. I want to be able to go back to the gaffer and say, look at me, I'm here. Like, if you give me my opportunity, I won't let you down. And I think here he's giving me, obviously the gaffer here is giving me loads of belief that he believes that I'm a very good player and I can play in his team. And obviously we're doing really, really well at the moment, so I just need to keep that going.
Well, Hearts are away to Motherwell on Sunday. Elsewhere, Rangers travel to Livingston tomorrow. Lee Johnson's Hibs side welcome Kilmarnock to Easter Road. St Mirren are at home to Ross County, and Dundee United take on St Johnstone. Partick Thistle interim manager Chris Doolan admits he and the players were shocked and gutted when Ian McCall was sacked. After almost 4.5 years in charge, McCall lost his job hours after the Jags' defeat to Rangers in the Scottish Cup on Sunday. The club say their decision was strategic in order to achieve promotion from the Championship.
I'm shocked, gutted, to be honest, because he's a good friend of mine as well. And he's been a mentor for me for my full career almost.
When did you get the call?
Late, very late. And like I said, that kind of shock, it was still there, and still is. But I think it's been important that this week we've settled things down, because United's come tomorrow.
To rugby, and after a 3-week break, Glasgow Warriors and Edinburgh are back in action this weekend. The Warriors, who have won 8 out of their last 9 games across all competitions, host Ulster at Scotland tonight. Scotland internationals Hamish Watson and Dave Cherry have been named in the Edinburgh team to face Scarlets tomorrow.
We're going to keep on doing what we do. We know what Ulster brings. Our focus is on ourselves. We still need to grow. I think a lot of things have been put in place in the last 6 months, but the detail and important stuff that's still got to be added to our game is going to take a lot longer to add on.
We're really pleased with the direction that the club's going. 2 really good wins against Cast, against Saracens. With Saracens down there, we pushed them all the way as well, and that was when they were unbeaten in the Premiership. So we believe we're in a good place, but we also believe there's some work to do to get to the final product.
Should be a couple of good games this weekend. That is all your sport tonight, folks. Have a great weekend. I'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Alan. Let's go back to Sean for that weekend weather forecast.
Get set for a wet spell. TUI sponsors STV weather.
A very good evening to you. Thank goodness we should get a better night's sleep thanks to Storm Otto. Bye-bye away into Scandinavia now, taking away the strongest winds. A much quieter night to come, but it is going to be very wet. We've got that rain moving in from the southwest at the moment, linked in with another area of low pressure and strong winds. But don't worry, strong winds not really reaching us during tonight. However, it will turn a wee bit breezier around the Hebrides, but nothing compared to last night. But the main story this evening and tonight is the rain, heavy bursts of rain, and not just rain, some snow over higher ground, the higher parts of the 85, for example, the 82. We could see some snow coming down to road level during tonight. But for most of us, it is just a very wet night. The rain turning a little bit more showery later on. Higher roads north of the Central Belt, possibility of some icy patches. Now, tomorrow morning shouldn't be a bad start to the day. The bulk of the cloud, the rain easing away. There will be some brighter spells, but quite quickly later in the morning into the afternoon, we start to see more cloud coming in and outbreaks of rain. So generally tomorrow not looking too great for many of us. Temperatures mild to southwest, the likes of Girvan up to 10 degrees, 50 degrees in Fahrenheit. But Fort William and also around Stirling, the temperatures staying a little bit colder here, probably about 5 to 6 degrees. More rain coming through on Sunday, and once again some of that will be on the heavy side, especially across the Highlands and Argyll. The rain more showery across Lanarkshire and also Ayrshire, staying unsettled through much of next week too. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV weather.
And you're away for a quick change. Emma, back with What's On Scotland.
I sure am. Lucky Laura's been down meeting the stars at the Brits, and I've been looking ahead to the Glasgow Film Festival. It's all coming up at 7, but that's all from us.
Thank you all for watching. Enjoy the rest of your night and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.